A man sits alone in a quiet, blood-splattered cabin. His hands are steady, his eyes cold. On the table in front of him are 7 black envelopes, each sealed with a red wax stamp, shaped like a drop of blood. He writes the final name on the last envelope and smiles. The name is not yours, not yet. But it could be, because this isn't just a dinner party. This is Dexter Morgan's new hunt, and his guests? They're killers too. Asterisk, after years of hiding in the shadows, Dexter Morgan had changed, or so he thought. He tried to leave behind his dark passenger. He wore new names, grew a beard, even worked at a small shop far from Miami. He lived a quiet life. No more blood slides. No more ritual kills. Just snow, silence, and guilt, but deep inside, something had always waited. The world had changed, but monsters still walked among us. Only now they didn't hide. They smiled on screens. They were loved by fans, protected by lies, or left untouched. By the law, Dexter saw the news. He saw them killing smart, careful, dangerous, killers who reminded him of himself, and that was the problem. He didn't fear them. He understood them. That's when the idea came. What if he didn't chase them one by one in the dark? What if he brought them all to one place out in the open, but trapped? A game, a dinner, a final test, not just for them, but for himself. Could he still outsmart them, control them? Or had the monster inside him already lost its edge? He chose the location carefully. A forgotten mansion hidden deep in the woods, far from cities, with no cell signal, no neighbors. A place where screams wouldn't echo past the trees. He repaired the rooms himself. He scrubbed the old dining hall until the wooden table shone like it once did. But this time there would be no toasts. No celebration. Only tension, truth, and death. Then came the letters. Dexter didn't need help finding their names. He had watched them for years on police reports, in online forums, through underground data leaks. Some were famous. Some were ghosts. But all of them killed with reason, not out of rage, not out of fear. Like him, they believed in their own code. And that made them dangerous. He wrote the letters with care, each one different. Each one personal. To Hannibal Lecter, he wrote of a rare taste waiting to be shared. To Joe Goldberg, he offered a chance to meet someone who finally understands you. To Villanelle, he promised a night of fun, blood, and no rules. Each invitation was bait, and they couldn't resist, but he wasn't just calling them for curiosity or revenge. Dexter wanted to test something deeper. Had he truly changed? Could he still survive among those who hunted like he once did? Or worse, had they evolved while he stayed the same? Each envelope was sealed with blood-colored wax, no return address, just a location, a time, and a chilling message. Dinner is served, only the worthy survive. As the letters were sent, Dexter stared at his own reflection in the mirror. His face looked calm, but inside, the voice was back, the voice he hadn't heard in years. It whispered, "You missed this." And maybe, just maybe, it was right, because this wasn't just a dinner, this was Dexter's stage. And when the monsters arrived, he would be ready, knife sharpened, rules rewritten, but what he didn't know was the monsters were ready too. Asterisk, the night was colder than expected. Trees swayed in silence. A thick fog rolled across the forest floor like a ghost trying to breathe. The mansion stood tall, old, and forgotten yet tonight. Its halls would welcome minds so dark. Even the shadows would shrink back in fear. They came one by one. The first to arrive wore a long black coat and gloves that never left his hands. He walked with grace, like a man going to a piano recital, not a killer's gathering. His name was Hannibal Lecter, psychiatrist, genius, cannibal. He brought his own wine, and Dexter knew not to ask what was in it. Hannibal admired the building's design, complimented the taste in decor, and smiled like he was the host, not the guest. He wasn't nervous, he was curious. To him, this was more than dinner. This was an art exhibit with living pieces. Next came a woman with a smirk on her lips and mischief in her eyes, Villanelle, dressed like she was going to a fashion shoot. Not a deadly trap. She didn't knock. She just walked in, dropped her heels at the door, and asked if the drinks were poisoned yet. She loved chaos, played with knives the way others played with makeup, and had never followed rules, not even her own. She blew a kiss toward Dexter's hidden camera and said, "I hope the food's good or I'll be eating the chef." Then came Joe Goldberg. Hoodie, books in his backpack, quiet eyes that scanned everything. Joe didn't like surprises, but he couldn't resist the invitation. He thought it might lead to someone special, someone who gets him. But as he stepped into the house, even Joe felt it. Something was wrong. This wasn't a place for lovers. This was a place for monsters like him. Still, he stayed. He always stayed until it was too late. The next figure arrived without a car, without a sound. He simply appeared. Norman Bates, shy, polite, soft-spoken. He said he was looking for his mother. When Dexter greeted him at the door, Norman stared a little too long and said, "She'd like this place." No one questioned him. No one wanted to. They all knew about the hotel. The knife. The silence after the screams. More followed. A charming man with sharp eyes, who only introduced himself as Joe from You, a mysterious woman from the shadows who said her name was Marianne, a killer who smiled too sweetly and whose past had been wiped clean more times than her blade. And finally, a stranger no one had expected, the Butcher of Baltimore, known for cleaning up crime scenes and leaving no one behind. 7 guests in total, each one dangerous, each one with blood on their hands, each one believing they were the smartest person in the room, but none of them knew the truth. They were already inside Dexter's trap. He had studied them, watched them, planned for their moves. He knew their favorite weapons, their habits, their fears. He had hidden cameras in every hallway, secret panels behind every wall. The dinner table wasn't just for eating, it was a stage. And Dexter was the director. Still, something felt off. Villanelle didn't sit where he expected. Hannibal asked questions Dexter didn't want to answer. Joe stared at a locked room like he had already picked the lock in his head. Norman kept mumbling to himself, or to someone who wasn't there. They were unpredictable. Worse, they were watching him too. He had invited monsters, but he had forgotten something important. Monsters don't like being hunted, and killers don't enjoy surprises. Every guest had a reason to kill, and if they realized who brought them here, Dexter would be the one tied to the table instead. As the clock ticked toward midnight, the dinner began. Laughter, jokes, wine, meat, sharp glances over sharp knives. But under the surface, they were reading each other like maps, searching for cracks, for traps, for the first excuse to strike. And in the quiet between bites, one voice spoke. "So, which one of us dies first?" Dexter didn't answer. He just smiled because the game had finally begun. The plates were full, but no one truly came for the food. The long oak dining table groaned under the weight of roasted meats, seasoned vegetables, and wine that flowed like blood. Candles flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. The fire crackled in the stone hearth, its warmth never reaching the cold tension circling the table. Dexter took his place at the head. He said nothing at first. He didn't need to. I was already on him, some curious, some cautious, others calculating. He raised his glass slowly. "To truth," he said. Villanelle laughed. "Truth at a table like this?" She leaned back, licking sauce off her fingers. "Darling, I thought this was supposed to be fun." Hannibal's eyes gleamed as he delicately sliced his meat. "Fun is subjective," he said smoothly, "but I am enjoying the flavor. Very familiar." His words hung in the air like smoke, sharp and uncomfortable. Norman didn't eat. He kept glancing at the seat beside him. An empty chair, he claimed, was reserved for his mother. He spoke to it under his breath, whispering things no one wanted to hear. Joe sat near the middle, quiet, watching everyone. He was thinking, always thinking. He had already mapped the exits, noticed the lack of phones, and counted every camera he could spot. He didn't trust Dexter, but then again he never trusted anyone. "Why us?" he finally asked. "Why tonight? Why now?" Dexter answered with a calm voice, "Because each of you lives by your own code. You kill with reason, not rage. I thought it was time we met, shared, understanding." Villanelle grinned. Or maybe you just got bored and wanted new toys to play with. Someone knocked over a glass. Silence followed. Then Hannibal spoke, his voice low and knowing. There is something beneath the surface of this dinner, a pattern. A trap. Are we the guests, or are we the game? Dexter didn't flinch, but inside his mind raced. He had planned everything, every entrance, every escape, every moment. But now something was wrong. The conversation wasn't going the way he expected. They were asking too many questions, connecting dots too quickly. He wasn't the only one who had done research. Someone else knew. He realized then these weren't just killers. These were survivors, hunters, liars who had built masks better than his own, and worse. One of them had already made a move. When the first scream came, it didn't come from the table. It came from the basement. Everyone froze. Dexter stood up, heart pounding. That wasn't part of the plan. No one was supposed to be in the basement except for the trap he had set, a failsafe, just in case someone got too clever, but someone had beaten him to it. He rushed down the stairs, the others following behind. What they found wasn't what Dexter had prepared. One of the guests had discovered his secret room, the one filled with tools, photos, blood slides. His whole history, someone had broken the lock, smashed the glass, taken a slide. Joe looked at Dexter with wide eyes. This isn't just a dinner, he whispered. You're profiling us, studying us. Villanelle clapped her hands. Oh, Dexter's a fanboy. How sweet. But Hannibal's voice cut through the tension like a scalpel. No, he's the judge. He brought us here to decide who deserves to live and who deserves to die. The room was spinning. Dexter tried to regain control. You've all done terrible things. I've done terrible things. But I followed a code. I hunted those who deserved it. And what if one of us thinks you deserve it? Joe asked. Silence again, because now the game had changed. Dexter had brought monsters to his table. But monsters don't sit quietly when they feel threatened. They bite. They claw. They kill. The group returned to the dining room. This time, no. One touched their food. Knives were no longer just for cutting steak. They were tools, weapons, symbols of trust. Or betrayal, Norman whispered to the empty chair again. Mother says he's lying. She says we're all in danger. Dexter scanned the room. One of them had found the room. One of them knew everything. And if they told the others, the balance would break. The trap would collapse. He had to act soon, before they turned on him, before someone else died. But as he reached for the wine, he noticed something chilling. One of the knives was missing. The storm outside had grown stronger. Rain slammed against the old windows and thunder rolled like a warning from the sky. Inside the mansion, the fire burned low, casting red light across the dinner table. No one spoke now. The air was heavy, thick with fear, doubt, and the feeling that something terrible was coming. The knife was still missing. Dexter sat at the head of the table, eyes slowly scanning the room. He tried to look calm, but his heart was racing. Someone here had stolen that knife. Someone had found his secret. And someone had changed the rules of his game. He wasn't the only hunter anymore. Villanelle twirled her fork, watching everyone with a playful smile. But her eyes, cold and sharp, were locked on Dexter. So, she said lightly, who's going to die next? We all know it's coming. Might as well take bets. Hannibal leaned forward, fingers steepled. Perhaps the question isn't who dies next, but why? That would tell us who's truly in control. Joe stood up. He couldn't stay still anymore. You invited us here, Dexter, he said, voice tight. You lured us into your trap, thinking you're smarter than all of us, but you made one mistake. He reached into his jacket and threw something onto the table. A small glass slide. It cracked slightly as it hit the wood. Dexter's stomach turned. That slide was part of his collection, a blood sample. A secret only he should have had. Joe continued. You left your past wide open. You thought no one would find your little museum downstairs, but I did. I saw your trophies, the photos, the tools. You think we're monsters? You're not judging us. You're trying to prove you're better. Norman looked confused. He has a museum? Villanelle leaned in. Oh, he does. It's like a creepy love letter to every person he's ever sliced. Dexter tried to respond, but Hannibal cut him off. You kill with a code, he said softly, but it's still killing. What gives you the right to decide who deserves to live? You brought us here thinking we'd play your game. But we are not your pawns. Joe nodded. You wanted to test us. But now we're testing you. That's when the lights went out. Total. Darkness swallowed the room. A chair scraped loudly. A glass shattered. And then another scream when the lights flickered back on. The group gasped. Hannibal was standing now, blood dripping from his side. His shirt torn, his hand pressed tightly over a wound. Someone stabbed me, he hissed. Very clean, very fast. Dexter rushed to help, but Hannibal pushed him away. No, he said. Stay back. Everyone looked around. No one saw who did it. But now it was clear. Someone had made the first move. The game was no longer just talk. It was war. Villanelle looked disappointed. Ooh, who stabs without flair? Norman whispered to his invisible mother. See? I told you they're all dangerous. Panic started to grow. Distrust spread like fire. No one sat anymore. They stood with their backs to the walls, eyes watching each other's hands. No one knew who the attacker was. And that made everyone a suspect. Dexter tried to regain control. Listen to me, he said. If we turn on each other, no one survives. We need to figure this out. Together, Joe shook his head. No, Dexter, you wanted chaos. You built this. You invited killers to dinner and thought you could stay clean, but now you're bleeding too. And he was right. Dexter felt it not on his skin, but in his mind. His plan had cracked. He had overestimated his control. He thought he could manipulate monsters like they were chess pieces. But monsters don't follow rules. Monsters cheat, they lie. And one of them had outplayed him. But who? He began thinking too fast. Everyone here had a reason to kill. Every guest had secrets, but one had stayed too quiet. Too still. Dexter turned slowly. Norman. He had been whispering all night, talking to his dead mother, smiling when no one else did, and now his hands were stained red, not just blood, red wax from the letters. Dexter's eyes widened. You sent a letter, he whispered. One I didn't write. Norman smiled sweetly. Mother thought it would be fun. He said, she said you'd try to play God. She said I should teach you what happens when gods bleed. It hit Dexter all at once. The trap wasn't his anymore. It belonged to Norman. He had rewritten the game, moved the pieces, even sent an extra invitation. That meant someone else was still coming. A final guest Dexter never expected. Before he could speak, the doorbell rang. A long, slow ring. The group froze. Villanelle clapped excitedly. Ooh, a twist! Dexter didn't move. He just stared at the door, realizing the truth. He wasn't the smartest person at the table, not anymore, and as he reached for his knife, still unsure whether it would be for protection or revenge, the door creaked open, but the screen cut to black before we saw who walked in. Only one sound played in the darkness. Footsteps.